Hey YouTube, so it's been another year for Dead by Daylight, not counting the anniversary event, but the normal year. So I wanted to go over all the killers and probably the survivors as well, their perks and any like major things that have happened to them, just to judge how good this year has been, mostly on the killer side, but also on the survivor side. So the first killer we got this year was Skull Merchant. Now, Skull Merchant, when she released, was an extremely controversial killer. She came out right on the tail end, or right when the 3-gen meta started to pop up because of Overbrand Eruption. That alone has tainted this killer's reputation completely. Now, that's not to say the killer was necessarily bad, but the way a lot of people played her made her very frustrating for the game and a bad thing for the game. To the point where she had to be reworked less than a year later. And probably needs another one, considering how upset people are with her current state. For the perks she brought to the game, we've got Game of Foot, which is an okay perk. Honestly, Game of Foot is a perk that I think has its uses. It's really good in Stabiffle builds or any build with the Obsession, as you can change the Obsession basically whenever you need to. Thwack, a perk which I've actually grown to like. It's just not very useful most of the time. The fact that this perk has so many hoops you have to run through for a little bit of aura reading, meanwhile Ultimate Weapon exists and it's the simplest thing ever and it's just on a cooldown, always baffles me. If anything, I think Thwack should be on cooldown. And Leverage, a perk I have literally seen no one ever use except for me when I'm going for completely random builds. It's an anti-healing build or perk that doesn't really do much, and you will almost never notice the effect. Perk-wise, nothing game-changing, and nothing really even, like, other than Game of Foot being good for Stabiffle, nothing really I've seen that goes into a lot of builds. On her own, though, she has not really done too much for the game other than cause a lot of people to hate on the character and people who play her. Overall, I would call it a fail of a chapter. On the killer side. Now, for the survivor side, I want to say that the two survivors we got with the Skull Merchant, which were Renato and Talia, wherever she is. Talia? Yeah, and Talita, were immensely game-changing. They both have voice lines for a lot of situations, and this is basically a prelude to Nicolas Cage and Chucky for the voice lines, and Larry did the same thing. And as far as their perks go, a lot of them aren't that great. Cut Loose, Friendly Competition, and Teamwork Power of 2. Nothing amazing that was game-changing. The fact that we did get a new perk type, though, in Teamwork was nice. I hope we see more of those soon. And then Renato, background player, Blood Rush, and Teamwork Collective Stealth. The Collective Stealth one barely gets used. I've never seen it, honestly. Blood Rush was something that people thought was going to be super game-breaking, and it was never used. Background player, on the other hand, when it was on the PTB, it was considered one of the worst perks ever and was actively detrimental. Then it got changed. Then it got buffed, and now it is one of the most fun survivor perks in the game, in mine and many other people's opinion. It allows you to go for flashlight saves and flashbang saves outside of the killer's terror radius, so you don't have to be standing nearby, and the killer can't prep for it as easily, or use infectious or other information tools to find you since you're out of range. Overall, the chapter was okay. Even the rework to the map was okay. Skull Merchant really does bring it down with her first iteration. I enjoyed the old Skull Merchant and didn't play in the 3-gen way, but even as someone who didn't, a lot of people will tell you, players who played her who said they didn't do it still did it, they just didn't realize. They weren't actively doing it, and that was the difference. She would accidentally 3-gen all the time. Her power was more of a trap power that was actively used in Chase, similar in a way to Hag. And it just, yeah. It was just not a very good design. To the point to when the rework happened, people still didn't like it and think that she needs another one. And honestly speaking, I think by design her power is going to be something that is going to be very difficult for the devs to balance in the future. And I hope we do see some more changes to her, but yeah, that's not even counting the character design issues that we were having with her. A lot of people were upset about that. Next up is Singularity, or Larry, as I like to call him. Larry is an interesting killer in the sense that he's not bad. I would probably put him in A tier if you're willing to put the time in to play him and learn how he works. Problem with that is, why would you do that when other killers can do his job with so much less effort? I mean, Artist, even someone like Dredge, Nurse, Blight, like, there's so many killers that just do what he can do, but just without the time investment or the learning curve. And that's not to say he's, like, some 1,000 IQ character that only, like, a select few people can play. I'm just saying he's a character that is completely differently played from other killers. In the sense that you have to micromanage a lot. Not just the survivors, not just the map, but also your cameras. EMPs, injure states, know when to slipstream, know when to not. Everything like that. As far as perks go, genetic limits. A perk I have never seen anyone run. I think it's right up there with Septic Touch. In fact, it does basically the same thing Septic Touch does. It does, except they have to finish the healing action. I honestly don't see this perk getting much use ever, because it's an exhaustion perk, and a lot of them on Killer don't get too much use for a lot of reasons. Forced Hesitation is one I've actually seen more people run recently, and it's great for stopping flashlight saves for people who are close, and in general for allowing a slugfest to start happening. If you're running the right build with Save the Best for Last, you can make this perk do so much work. Machine Learning. This is a very situational perk that I've seen some people running on Pig recently, and a few other stealth killers who can make great use of this. Problem is the activation takes way too much effort sometimes, and the fact that they can pop a gen you didn't kick and you don't get any effect from it. If there was one change I'd make to this perk, I'd keep the fact that you had to basically kick a gen twice, because you had to prep it and then you had to kick another gen to actually activate it. I would make it so if any gen pops, then you get the effect. I don't know if that would be too strong, but undetectable and 10% haste for 30 seconds is actually nuts. You combine this with Tinkerer, they'll never see you coming, and you can basically hide and wait, and maybe get a double hit in if you're fast enough. Interesting perk for sure. I will say all of his perks are interesting, except for maybe genetic limits. For the Survivor, we had Gabe, who I don't even have to mention. Gabriel made for this Soma. Now, we got Troubleshooter made for this and Scavenger. Troubleshooter is a perk I have never seen anyone run. I've heard it's okay, but I have never seen it run. Good on aura builds, but otherwise it's not a good meta build. Made for this. Probably the king of this game for about 6 months. Honk honk, nudge nudge with Skull Merchant. But made for this. A perk that had to be nerfed to the point where I barely see this perk anymore. The fact that it only works during Deep Wounds now, I don't think it's a bad perk at all. I just think it's more situational than it was, which is a good thing. And yeah, that alone, from the Survivor side, this chapter was a huge win. For the Killer side, I would say not so much. And then Scavenger, a perk that people thought was going to be problematic, and really to the point to where it got nerfed so hard that now no one uses it, which is a common theme in Dead by Daylight. That Odds did a video on a while ago, and I've seen it pop up here and there, and I think it's going to be a slept-on perk, and one of those perks that I think in about a year or so we're going to see ran way more, and it's going to become a problem again. But we'll see. Overall, though, I think the Singularity chapter was alright. It was probably the most mid-chapter of the year, and probably the most mid-chapter in probably the last couple years, if I'm being honest. Like, it's not a huge license, it was a huge turn into sci-fi. That was a big thing with this year, was we got into sci-fi a lot more. But, yeah, overall, like, It was a mid chapter, other than made for this, because Singularity on release, no one really played him, and even now, no one really plays him. He's one of the least played killers in the game. A lot of his perks don't get used outside of very specific situations. Yeah, I would say it was a very mid chapter, honestly. Next, we have our first licensed chapter of the year, which was the Xenomorph, who I'm going to be going to have a real hard time talking over. So, Xenomorph, this license, and much like the next license, is one that people have been asking for years, and we never thought we'd get it. Now, I will concede I'm disappointed a little bit that the power has nothing to do with facehuggers, and it's mostly just an anti-chase power. However, I think aesthetically speaking, and I know I'm wearing the Blighted skin, but aesthetically speaking, I think they nailed this chapter 100%. The feel, the tunnels. I've said before that one of the best things they've done with this chapter was, or how the power works, is how you feel like you're kind of like the Xenomorphs in the movies. You get hit with the flamethrower, and because you don't have your power and it takes forever to recharge outside of the tunnels, it forces you to kind of scurry away and get your power back, kind of like they do in the movies. Now, it doesn't always work like that. You know, a lot of times you'll just keep chasing anyways, but in theory, it would make you want to go back into your tunnels. The footstep mechanic is cool. The fact that they added an entirely new map for the tunnels is so cool. I will give Behavior credit on everything this year. Each of the new killers added something to the game that we don't really think about and probably won't for a couple years that is kind of pushing the game forward a little bit. Skull Merchant added the drones, which adds a huge aesthetically pleasing, I want to say aesthetically pleasing, on the killer side, aesthetically pleasing area of the map. Singularity added the ability to stick things to walls. I don't think we've had a single killer that can do that before Singularity. Xenomorph added an entirely new map underneath through the tunnel system, and Chucky's the first third-person killer. Like, there was so much added this year that I don't think a lot of people were giving Behavior enough praise about. Anyways, back to the killer and the chapter as a whole. Perk-wise, Ultimate Weapon. One of, if not the best tracking perk in the game. To the point to where we know what's getting changed soon. This perk speaks for itself, much like Made for This did. And, I mean, this alone makes this chapter win, in my opinion. Rapid Brutality, a very situational perk, however, combined with Save the Best for Last on a few specific killers, cough, cough, nudge, nudge, clown, this perk is immensely powerful. You do lose Bloodlust with it, so you can't gain Bloodlust anymore. However, the 5% haste for 10 seconds, which is more like 8, is huge and can allow you to catch up to survivors much faster. It's one of those perks that you don't really notice when you're using it until you start to use it a lot. It has become one of my favorite perks. I run it on pretty much every killer who M1s a lot. And then Alien Instinct. Probably the worst perk that they have, and it's just discount barbecue. I mean, to be fair, I can think of situations where this perk could be useful. However, they're so specific that it's just not that good. You can combine it with some other things and make it decent, but yeah, it's just not that good. The biggest problem is the fact that you see the farthest injured survivor. I think a good buff they could do to this is basically you see all injured survivors, no matter the range. I think that would be a cool buff to it and actually make it decently useful on at least a few killers. Plague and Legion would go insane for this perk. The problem is that it shows you the farthest away. Now, it does make them oblivious for 20 seconds, but that 20 seconds isn't enough on some maps. And granted, if there's only one injured person and they're nearby, yeah. But still, it's just not that great of a perk. On to Ellen. Ellen Ripley, the survivor for the chapter. She had some interesting perks. So for Ripley, we got Lucky Star. When you hide in the locker, this perk activates. You leave no pools of blood or grunts of pain for 10 seconds. When you exit a locker, you see the survivors for 10 seconds, blah, blah, blah. Then it goes on cooldown for 30 seconds. This is a decent perk that I think, once again, it just runs into the same problem Dead by Daylight always has, is that it's only good in solo queue, and in solo queue, you kind of don't want to run a perk like this because you're gunning for yourself a lot, so it doesn't help your survivability a lot of the time. That's the biggest issue. Chemical Trap, an interesting perk that lets you trap a pallet and slow the killer if they hit it. Basically only useful on god pallets, and there are 2 killers in the game who completely negate this, and one of them was released this year. It's an interesting idea. I would actually kind of like to see it get buffed. I think the easiest buff they could do to this, I don't think that the killer should see that it's on the pallet. Maybe that's just a me thing. I don't know. But interesting. It's similar to Flashbang for pallets, but yeah. It's basically only good on god pallets. Pallets that the killer has to break. Otherwise, they're not even going to bother. Or they'll just break it anyways and just eat the slowdown. And Light-Footed. When you're healthy, this perk activates. Footsteps to silence. That's basically it. This is one of those perks, and we're going to do a whole video on perks similar to this, where the problem isn't the effect. This actually is a pretty okay effect, and can save you. The problem is you don't know if it did. You have no indication that this perk is the reason you weren't found. There's Jonesy. Hi. You have no way of knowing if this perk was what helped you survive, evade the killer, etc., etc. It's just the problem with a lot of perks. But, yeah. Overall, though, and also they didn't get the likeness for Sigourney. I'm sure that was a licensing deal reason. I don't think it hurts the chapter too much. I think they did a decent job with making her look like it is. I don't fault Laurie Strode for not looking like Laurie Strode. But overall, I think the Xenomorph chapter is the best chapter we got this year. And that's not my bias coming out. At least I'm trying to make sure it's not. I haven't really prestiged Xenomorph all that much. I played them a lot for fishing streams, but I haven't really like sat down and actually played Xeno all that much. But yeah, overall, I think it was the best chapter of the year for both sides. In the sense of decently fun killer. Because, I mean, Singularity and Skull Merchant had a few playstyles that people didn't like. At least with Xenomorph, you were still running away from them and being chased, you know? Now, before we move on to Chucky, I do want to do a mention of Nicolas Cage. The reason being is Nicolas Cage didn't get a chapter, and Chucky didn't get a survivor. Technically speaking, that means Nicolas Cage is Chucky's survivor. I will die on the hill that is the case, and I love that idea. This was a survivor and / chapter that I don't think anyone thought we were going to get. And I am... If you told me 2 years ago that Nicolas Cage, just Nicolas Cage, not a character he plays, just Nicolas Cage was in this game, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have told you you're insane, that's stupid, the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Now, anything's possible, man. Anything's possible. So we have Dramaturgy. An interesting exhaustion perk that is basically like discount sprint burst on command, which is kind of cool. I think this perk is one of those ones that I don't see too often, but when I do, it's really annoying. Now, it does have the downside of it's possible for you to become exposed, but like the other effects, like probability-wise, because of how that works, the other effects make it kind of worth it. There's a chance that you get the 50% boost or 25% boost for 4 seconds instead of 2. Nothing can happen, or you can just gain a random item. It's a really, really cool perk idea, and I love how much it fits into the legend of Nicolas Cage. Not him himself, obviously, but you know how people perceive him. Scene Partner, this is probably the worst perk he has, and the one I see the least. Given the aura, but, you know, making you scream is kind of cool. I like the idea of this perk and how silly it is and how fun it is and how it can be genuinely useful, even though, you know, you scream when you look at them. In Chase, that's not that big of a deal because you see their aura for 5 seconds. They just see, you know, a circle of where you are. And it's where you were when you screamed. They don't, like, get constant notifications on you. Overall, I think this perk is just fine. It's fun. It's cool. I like it. And then Plot Twist. Probably the most meta perk he has. You feign death, and you get yourself back up and fully healed. That's just, it's really cool. I like this perk. I had a similar idea to a perk like this years ago, and I'm glad that we finally have one where you can kind of fake your death. It once again, it is his most meta perk, and I think it's not only is it fun in the sense of it's useful and you know it got use and it can, save time in the match and whatever. It's also just a fun perk. There are a lot of interesting things you can do with this perk. You can make it so the killer doesn't get a Stabiffle stack. You don't get hit with Noed. You can make it so Infectious Fright doesn't go off. Anything that requires the killer to down you physically, Eruption, Jolts. There's a lot of things that this perk just lets you do, where you can just go down instantly yourself. It's not just getting yourself up. There are many, many, many things this thing can do. You can also like go down before the killer hits you, and then Adrenaline immediately after if you can time it perfectly. There's a lot of things, and I love this chapter or not chapter, but this this character for that. I think Nicolas Cage was a huge boon for the game, and the time period between Nicolas Cage and Chucky's release, I think was some of the best moments I've had in Dead by Daylight as far as the community goes. Speaking of, next is Chucky, who is going to laugh a lot here in a second. So, Chucky was the first third-person killer we ever got. I did a concept video for Chucky a month before he dropped into the game. I had no idea. It was just lucky. And I don't like to toot my own horn, but I got a lot of it right. I didn't predict a third-person camera because who the fuck would have predicted that? I did predict he was going to be 110 and he was going to have some power that lets him catch up super fast. And make him undetectable. I had an idea for good guy dolls being scattered around that. Regardless, that's not the point. Overall, we've had a few issues with this chapter in the sense of there have been some changes to Chucky that a lot of Chucky players don't like. A lot of Survivor players do. And there have been some other changes on the reverse end of that. Particularly Scamper and being able to go longer than 90 degrees with his slice and dice. Overall, if I'm just taking the package as a whole and not looking into like the exact specifics, I think Chucky was a hit or a home run of a chapter as far as the killers go. We'll go over the perks here in a second, but the killer itself I think was a massive W for behavior. I mean, he's one of the most played killers right now. And I know it's because he's new, but he still is. And I think that's always a good sign that behavior did a good job with the killer. He's just fun. Not as fun as he used to be because you can't do the 180 flicks, but overall, I think he's still extremely fun. There's a lot of different playstyles you can do with him. He's probably the most modular killer in the game in the sense that almost any build works on him. Because he's an M2 and an M1 killer and a stealth killer on demand. But yeah, there's a lot you can do here. His biggest downside is that he's a 110 M1 killer, which is not always the best. Perks, we got Hex 2 can play. A bit of a meme perk. I've used it a few times and it's actually gotten me a few downs, but overall, just it's a fun perk, but one of those ones that you don't always notice working. Plus, it requires you to get stunned and blinded, which is harder than you think. It's one of those things where when you want it to happen, it doesn't. And then you kind of feel bad. On top of that, it's also a hex, so they can cleanse it. Friends to the End. Probably the perk that you're going to see the most from him. It's cool on Obsession builds. It's cool on Expose builds. It's really fun. It's good information. There's a lot this perk does, and overall, it's generally a good perk. There are some killers that make this perk problematic, but it's still decent. Like, there's nothing wrong with this perk. I think it's perfectly okay. One thing I would maybe do is increase the expose timer to 30 seconds, if I was being honest, but even then, the 20 is fine. I've gotten plenty of downs with it. There's just a lot of times when, like, I just reached them, and I wish it lasted a little bit longer. And batteries included, a perk that everyone was freaking out about, and then behavior nerfed it because of that, and then they reverted the nerf because people were freaking out that they nerfed it. This is basically an in-game perk for the most part. I mean, it can work during the game. There's some maps where, especially ones with main building gens, that if they get done first, you basically have a 5% haste effect throughout the entire building, which can be insane. But yeah, overall, perk-wise, he's got a fun one, an in-game one, and a decent one. I'd say the perks are fine. The story, the chapter as a whole, though, I think it was a W. I don't think it was the best chapter of the year, and this is coming from someone who mains Chucky. I've done nothing but play him since release. But I still think that crown goes to Xeno. And if I had to put it in a tier list, honestly, I would go Xenomorph, Chucky, Larry, Skull Merchant. I think it goes in... I think it's definitely the order. Now, I think one thing we do need to talk about, though, is watching out for next year. I think next year is when we're going to start to get some really interesting killers. I think next year is when Behavior is going to start flexing their design team props because of all the new stuff we got this year as far as mechanics go. And I know like a lot of them aren't like interactable mechanics, but we have a killer who can place things on walls, one who can go under an entirely different map, and one who's in third person. These are 3 mechanics we have not had in the game at all. And I would love to see what Behavior does with all of this. I mean, there's a lot of potential there. The next chapter we're getting isn't going to be for a little while. However, we are getting a Survivor in January, so that's going to hold us over till then. Technically, that Survivor is the one that comes with Chucky. However, I'm still holding onto my hand cannon for Nicolas Cage being Chucky's Survivor, technically speaking. So overall, I think Skull Merchant's chapter was a W for the survivors and L for the killers. I think Singularity was meh for killers and a massive W for survivors because it made for this. I think Xeno was a W on both sides, and I think Chucky and Nicolas Cage being separated, I think that was also a W on both sides. Once again, I don't think this year was as bad as people brought it out to be. We got a lot of good changes this year. It wasn't even just the killers. I mean, we got the Survivor HUD this year. We got some nerfs that needed to happen. 3-gen got addressed relatively quickly. I know some people are upset that it took as long as it did, but faster than anything's ever been nerfed like that in a long time. Made for This got nerfed. Skull Merchant got an entire rework. Sadako got a rework this year. There's a lot that happened, and I hate when people are like, Behavior didn't do anything this year. I think that a lot's changed. The events were decent. I'm not the biggest fan of the current one anymore, which I'm going to do a video about tomorrow. But yeah, overall, like I think we had a good year for this game. Definitely not a perfect year. I mean, Skull Merchant in particular kind of killed the game for a little while, and Knight with her, and he came out right before her. But yeah, tell me what you guys think. If y'all think I'm crazy and some of these chapters were worse or better than I'm saying that they are. I'd love to hear it. And yeah, I know this is coming out the day after Christmas, but happy holidays to everybody. And thank y'all so much for, I believe we're almost at 600 subs. I know this video is probably not going to get watched a lot, but I just like talking, and I didn't have an idea for a video today, and this is what I wanted to do. And I am aware, I am 100% aware that Mint Skull did a video just like this today, with much more production value, and probably did it much better than me. I didn't watch it, okay? I purposely avoided watching it until I was done making this video, because I want to see what he has to say about all of this. In any case, I love you guys. Always try to have fun in this game, and I'll see you when I see you. Love you, and bye!